When we think about poverty, our minds usually go straight to dollars and cents. But what if the biggest cost isn't financial at all? What if it's neurological? Today, we're going to go way beyond the bank statement to uncover the hidden tax that scarcity puts on the human brain. Okay, let's dive right in.
So let's just start with the big question, the one that frames this whole thing. What does it really, truly cost to live in poverty?
Well, it turns out the research is piling up, and it's telling us something pretty shocking. The price is so much steeper than we ever thought. It's a constant, relentless drain on your mental bandwidth. Basically, a tax on your very ability to think. And as we're about to see, that daily struggle leaves an actual physical mark on the brain itself.
Okay, so to really see this in action, we're going to start with a puzzle that plays out every single month in millions of homes. Researchers have a name for it, the payday brain drain.
This quote right here from the author Stephanie Land, it just nails it. It's not just about not having enough money. It's the all-consuming mental work of managing not having enough money. This is not a passive thing. It is an active, exhausting, full-time job for your brain.
So, a bunch of scientists got this really clever idea. They wanted to measure this mental job. In a 2016 study, they gave people cognitive tests at two very specific times, right after they got paid, when they had some breathing room, and then again right before their next payday, when things were tightest. The question was pretty simple. Does your brain literally work differently when you're flush versus when you're broke?
And the results, they were absolutely stunning. What you're looking at here is just so revealing. See those bars on the left? Those are the days right before payday. As cash gets scarcer, cognitive scores just plummet. In the last 3 days of the pay cycle, performance dropped by almost 5%. That's a huge dip, and it proves that something much deeper is going on here than just being short on cash.
So what is that something? What's really happening? Well, this brings us to the core idea behind it all, something called the scarcity mindset.
So, here's the key. Your brain has a limited amount of processing power, right? Scientists call this cognitive load. A great way to think about it is like the RAM on your computer. The constant stress of juggling bills, trying to make every dollar stretch at the grocery store, worrying about what happens if the car breaks down, that's like running dozens of really demanding programs all at once in the background. It just eats up a massive chunk of your mental bandwidth.
And this slide just lays out the difference so clearly. On the left, when you're crushed by scarcity, your life becomes this relentless series of putting out fires. You're just constantly juggling, trying to solve the next immediate crisis. Your focus narrows down to only the most urgent problem right in front of your face. That's what researchers call tunnel vision. But look at the right side. With just a little bit of slack, you suddenly have the mental space to plan for the future, to see the bigger picture, and to make a mistake without it turning into a total catastrophe.
But here's where it gets even more serious. This constant cognitive load, this state of chronic stress, it doesn't just affect how you think in the moment. Over time, it can physically reshape the very architecture of the brain. This is where the story goes from being psychological to being biological. You see, the persistent, grinding stress of poverty isn't just a feeling. It's a physiological force that can physically change the brain. And these effects are most powerful and sadly most damaging during the really critical developmental years of childhood.
Just look at this number for a second. One huge study found that kids and families living at or below the poverty line had, on average, about a 9% reduction in gray matter in critical areas like the frontal cortex and hippocampus. Now, these aren't just random spots. They are the brain's command centers for learning, memory, and self-control, the exact skills you need to do well in school and, well, in life.
So how in the world does this happen? Well, think of your body's stress response as its built-in alarm system. When your brain's threat detector, the amygdala, senses danger, it kicks off this whole chain reaction that floods your body with the stress hormone cortisol. And that's great if you need to run from a tiger. But here's the problem. When the threat is the unending stress of trying to make ends meet, that alarm system just never, ever turns off. And having those high levels of cortisol all the time can become toxic, damaging the very brain structures a kid needs to grow and thrive.
And the impact doesn't stop there. It's not just about thinking and memory. The experience of poverty also reshapes how our brains process the world on the most fundamental level, our emotions.
So using these incredible fMRI scanners that let them watch the brain in action, neuroscientists found a direct link between a person's socioeconomic status and how their brain responds emotionally. To put it simply, a life of scarcity seems to tune the brain to be hyper-vigilant, to be constantly scanning for and overreacting to potential threats in the environment.
So what does a brain biased toward the negative actually look like? Well, inside the scanner, folks from lower income backgrounds tend to show a much stronger, more reactive amygdala, that's the alarm bell, when they see something negative, like an angry face. At the same time, the connection between that alarm bell and the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that's supposed to hit the brakes and calm you down, is often weaker. That combination of a hair trigger alarm and weak brakes, well, that's a known risk factor for developing anxiety and mood disorders down the road.
Okay, I know hearing all of this can feel pretty heavy, pretty discouraging. But, and this is a huge but, the very same science that shows us the problem also points toward a really powerful message of hope. So let's pivot and talk about building a resilient future.
And this, right here, might be the single most important takeaway from all of this. The brain isn't set in stone. It's incredibly plastic, it's malleable. The neurological marks left by poverty and stress, they are not a life sentence. They are not permanent. And crucially, the science shows us they are reversible.
And the best part? We already know what works. The evidence points to a whole strategy. Things like buffering a child's stress with high-quality, loving care, boosting their skills with early education programs, supporting the mental health of parents, and, on a bigger scale, policies that reduce that constant financial stress, things like the Earned Income Tax Credit. These things directly lessen the cognitive load on an entire family, freeing up that precious mental bandwidth so everyone can flourish.
So the science is crystal clear. We have the knowledge, we have the tools to protect developing brains and to actually reverse the neurological cost of poverty. The damage isn't permanent and the solutions are known. Which really just leaves us with one final big question. We know the effects are reversible, so what are we waiting for?